Hello, hello, hello. Hello, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Okay, a book live after a break of around 3-4 days. Last 3-4 days, kitang gana tawre. Tabakal laibagi kitang chillure aitar. So we are back again with the reading comprehension. Ngasidi kano tawsi yam nungaiba kano ma article haitare blog so haibe ai ama discuss tawsi. So ngasi tawdoi ba akhoi na topic si article si nupasina ibani magi maming si Ryan Holiday kawi masi afauba kano na hatare American writer ni especially mana irisi akhoi philosophy ancient philosophy thainagi ada thainagi philosophy da muk karam bada haga koi stoicism haitaraga di akhoi external kanosi environment the best tawdaba akhoi yamna harauraga su natraga yamna nungaiba ama leiraga su masaji self control da leiba da yam waba taraga su sana isabu control tawzaba adugumba gi philosophy du buni stoicism haizika adui matang da like yam iramba nupani hoisu iri he's just 38 years old masi akhoi gi marketing akhoi kanogi firm amagisu kanosu oirame hai chip kanosu oirami akhoi gi marketer haitare but adu mayam do tokthoga ma sai gi kanosigi matangda akhoi stoicism si matangda iramba like mayam mai haitare ka right so mana iramba like singi manungda fawbo like hargadi si one of my favorites ni adudi ego is the enemy ka by Ryan Holiday. Then atopada sigi stillness is the key ka sisu by Ryan Holiday. The obstacle is the way, the ancient art of turning adversity to advantage. My like singi pabade yamna lai aruba word kusu yam yaude haitare ka aduga yamna koksu kono thadaningai oide haitare aduna masi pabe aba lai ka tane. Then discipline is destiny, the power of self control. So Ryan Holiday ki like se pabe yamna nungai aduga mase New York Times ki best selling books ta dum yawe haitare ka mi mayam kono khoi gi leaders mayam yam pai haitare my like se adu masam nahazu 38 years old katani aduga mana iriba ngasai gi theme china ngasai gi stoic philosophy akoi external environment na akoi gi life chi change to honda bai tar ko adugi matang da ayam bana I hai tar. So ngasi gi article mana iba adu da last e yes si magi kano dagi ni website dagi ni ngasi gi article sigi title se si ni Stoicism practical philosophy you can actually use ka philosophy hairaga akoina ngasai gi just nuai bagi pabado adu khatang na taba akoina life ta tasengna sinaba yaba philosophy ne man hai dise ka stoicism hai se. So how to see the picture me yaurija si canonical the Marcus Aurelius thainagi Roman emperor duni masu stoic philosophy gi achoba proponent amne hatare mana ngasai gi magi meditation saiba like to the mana ngasai gi Stoic philosophy ki matangda yam iramme haitare adu one of the most popular Stoic books ne ko aduna ne mana sida sigi pictures happy se Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius ki happy se. So let's begin. When most people think of philosophy, their eyes glaze over. It's the last thing they want, let alone something they need. But this, as you already know, is silly and naive. Philosophy is not just about talking or lecturing or even reading long, dense books. In fact, it is something men and women of action use and have used throughout history to solve their problems and achieve their greatest triumphs. Not in the classroom, but on the battlefield, in the forum, and at court. So, ahanbagi paragraph ani ahum subasida mana hairisi asai philosophy is hek mina khanba matamda asai mamit se glaze over asianing de da kana mamit to phalang phaidokhi ba taning de da khaning de da kana khanba do adugumba tawgal lev ko is the last thing they want, let alone something they need. So mayam sida philosophy bu hairadi asai dagada de da ai pam de da admaina tum khalleba ko adagi let alone ai dagadi tokro kan hai ne ko ai pam de ai dagada ba ka tokro pam de hai ni se ko is the last thing they want means it is something that they don't want have ne pam de have ne last thing ai di sai apam mayam marak tu da quai last lay have ne that means pamba oi de have ne ko phazaba wahi ni akoina pot ama pam de hai matam da I don't like and direct haiba would is the last thing I want have sa masi yamna phazaba mong da pam de hai ni ko kano akoi gi nang kano yi pam bra cricket pam bra hai ko is the last thing I want hai ta ga de ai pam boy de ai na pam ma am pot ma am du gi list da khwai de gi last da lei ba pot ni hai ne is the last thing I want hai na tra de want hai ga di ko so adugumba pot ni philosophy kanam taning de kanam pam de na pam de ba ko moi taka ta ba wa du tokro let alone ai di thadokro hai ni ko aduna daga ta ba pot tu tokro pam bu pam de have ne ko. But this, as you already know, is silly and naive. Sinang na hana usukhangi dunni masi apang bani amadi yamna wakhan ta driba akoi gi naive ai targadi apang ba ko koi kem khangjadriba adugum me naive ai ko masi pa matam da naive ko. Philosophy is not just talking or lecturing or even reading long dense books. Philosophy hai ta ga de khoi gi knowledge wisdom gi matang da study ta wadoni so hai basi khoi na lecture to bagumba de wari sanaba talking or lecturing adum khatan natte or even reading long dense book like acha tha ba dagi am sang ba like pa ba to ayamana philosophy like si am thagalli adagi kaino su tawgali dana ko adu du natte sinima na hari ko koi gi like pa ba dagi lecture to ba dagi mi na wari sana ba adugumba khata natte ha bane philosophy ko. In fact, it is something men and women of action use and have used throughout history to solve their problems and achieve their greatest triumphs, not in the classroom but on the battlefield, in the forum, and at court. So philosophy si kasai gi kano du natte wari sanaraga koi ngang gi thabak to du khata natte masi men and women of action to mina adum sine philosophy ko throughout the history thain dagi hauna to solve their problems and achieve their greatest triumphs magi ngasai gi problem solve to ba adagi akoi gi khwaidi chaw victory ma'am do da moina philosophy sine not in the classroom da khak nei na bagi natte masika de sine am tam the battlefield da lan pham da in the forum mayam pulak pada and at court so tum sine have. It was jotted down and practiced by slaves, poets, emperors, politicians and soldiers as well as ordinary folks to help with their own problems and those of their friends, family and followers. This wisdom is still there available to us. So jotted down the yam tu na isan ba do na notebook ama do ko ozana ngang ko sa isan mam lei dana adu do ning jotted down hai ko masi kanana isalli masai philosopher natraga fazawa kanosi philosophy ji kana gum na ngang ku matam da masi jotted down isalli koina aduga practice to we have a life the sin they have any action oina by slaves, poets, emperors, politicians and soldiers moina zusine as well as ordinary folks some behind ordinary people hai ko ordinary folks to help with their own problems and those of their friends, family and followers. So masagi problem solve to bada amasung magi family, friends and followers ki ka problem solve to bada sin ay have never. Sida koi metaphor masina re English ki. Sida yung friends su F na hodra, family su F na hawi, followers su F na hodra. Ka sumbay na what humari sinaba anihum sinabada. Same kanona hawase same letter na hawase masi phajaba singi metaphor of kanoni speech ni ka masi bu kai kau ge ma tamda alliteration kawi si t double t ra ama t yung tang la ju khang dra alliteration ka alliteration hai ta ga di same letter na akoi kano hawase asai gi word ani hum do hi hawaje adu bo alliteration kawi si metaphor of speech ni so say part and parcel ka hai se pi lo hawi na ka phajari ne se natra adagi akoi gi atopa kano su lai re mi maming da so khoina kano ga lai se Andre Agassi ka hai se natra e lo hawi na so sumba se phajawa kano ne hai ta re akoi combination of words ne hai ta re sai same letter na hawa se ko dam sinar kani masi am toin thena bani so big bold and kari beautiful hai nei dana ka si phajai si kai ginan tan b la hawai ne se right adagi nangi black beauty gaina lei dana lei dana black beauty gaina so si b la hawai si phajai ne se so si bu kai kawe alliteration kawe English ki phajaba kanone hai tar arrangement of words ne hai tar ka so this wisdom is still there available to us sigi kano ji wisdom hai di loksing ji lai hai bani akoi de job ji shodum sin nei ba yara mong da lai hai ne ka ado mana philosophy da specifically mana kano focus to ri ga da no hai matam da specifically I am referring to Stoicism, which in my opinion is the most practical of all philosophies. A brief synopsis of this particular school of Hellenistic philosophy, Stoicism was founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BC, but was famously practiced by the likes of Epictetus, Cato, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. The philosophy asserts that virtue, such as wisdom, is happiness, and judgment be based on behavior rather than words. That we don't control and cannot rely on external events, only ourselves and our responses. Akoi synopsis hai ta di yamna samjalaga hairabada koi yam samna koi kano summary ama hai ta ko adumagi type ta haiba matamda a brief synopsis of this particular school of Hellenistic philosophy. So kasai school iti magi school of thoughts to ni magi wakan khan bagi mong do ne ko Stoicism haiba kasai school of thought to masi karamba philosophy no haiba matamda masi Hellenistic philosophy ni Hellenistic philosophy hai target di ngasai gi mana hai se akoi Alexander Shiva se 323 BC na tramai da ka adu dagina somewhere around 21 BC ka akoi gi adai bogi matam gi philosophy je koina Hellenistic philosophy adu period to bune mana Hellenistic philosophy ai ka so a brief synopsis sigi summary hama hai matam da si of this particular school as in say stoic philosophy do ne ka adu hairam ge sine ma ha ma khata bada dot mas colon am piri je ma khata piri je synopsis to ne hai ne ka Stoicism kana founded kana hodom bano ha matam da Zeno of Citium in hodom ban in the early 3rd century BC ko 3rd century BC je khoi na masi kano nen lawi 300 BC dagina up to 201 BC bo lawi ko so si bu 3rd century BC ko akoi gi kano oiragana AD oiragana kaya oideba 201 to 300 AD oidine ko sidana handare sidana hengale natra sikai hai matamda BC dadi masagi BC dadi chahi je sum handara kaduni dana ko akoi thaini matamdu 10,000 BC ga haidana ko adagi sum akoi gi ngasagi Jesus Christ ki magi period to akoina 0 kano oidini natra 0 AD oidini aduna matamje smaina BC de sum handara ga chalaga adai AD je mo horokadune hoje koi lai kya na 2025 ki AD ne so ado number si BC dadi achobodagi macharom da laeba matam gi khongchet ko aduga AD da na macha dagi achoboda sakhiduine so adugi period to 300 ko 300 tagina asagi 201 bodo adu bodo kai kauge ha matam da madubu 3rd century BC oidune natra okay adu oidune right so aduda haudo mbani but was famously practiced by the likes of Epictetus si philosopher ki maming atane ko moisi stoic philosophy do ki kono atane hai tare proponent practice toramba mi atane hai tare aduga adui maramda support toraga ngangamba mi atane hai tare Cato Seneca the Marcus Aurelius thing sa hai gre sagi Roman emperor duni who was also a philosopher ka he was the true philosopher king ni the philosophies asserts that virtue versus wisdom is happiness and judgment based and judgment be based on behavior rather than words. So sagi stoic philosophy na hai se aikoi ki virtue hai ta di aphaba gun da chingi si aikoi ki buddhi loksing leiba si aphaba gun chingi natra such as wisdom maini is happiness so gun ji taseng na yauraga di nungai ba si phangani habne virtue is happiness habani aduga judgment be based on behavior mi amana based on was should be based on behavior and action rather than words ka words the koi mi amana nga pha pha taw ni hairaga heta pha ba natte mana thabak to tor kanda sai apha ba do oi du ne natra aduna judgment ji apha ba da taw ba apha ba action taw ba da judgment pigadabani amati words the piroidabani aduga akoi gi apha ba haibasi akoi buddhi loksing leiba khotpa haibasi akoi da tasengna nuaiba sengba nuaiba do oikani haibasi stoic philosophy gi kano ne main theme ne bakang that we don't control and cannot rely on external events only ourselves and our responses so ngasai gi external events akoi na control to bangam da pot akoi da thok matam da akoi na karmaina madu respond tauke habado adu du stoic philosophy ki wakhalon ni magi idea ne so mi ani leire ani leibadu da chamana ba event thok tu ni ko mabani kano tholak pada ngasai gi thabak chat ken tholak pada akoi gi gari phangre na khallo abana ngasai gi gari phang da du sau tu ni thengani khot kani asai kamain tawni na mi akoi ga kai hai ni massage control taw dabida sauning maduna ngasai thangnawa mi dong saujen duini adu chamana ba case to atopa ma da thok ma tamda yamna cool and calm oina mana control tawjaraga masadu asidi gari lak trama le adu de kai tawbai ai khallaga atopa gari lak thorok pada ma help loraga hitchhike tawdana lip loraga ma chakhiba yai ko aduna chamana ba external event da kamaina akoina kono react tawke kamaina koina respond tawke habado adu dune ba sai stoic philosophy haije right see next paragraph se the Ryan Holiday ki 7-day course ki matang da ne kala se but at the very root of the thinking there is a very simple though not easy way of living. Take obstacles in your life and turn them into your advantage. Control what you can and accept what you can't. So ngasa haigibado sigi very root of the thinking stoic philosophy gi thinking se ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏ ꯃꯈꯣꯡꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯁꯤꯝꯄꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯂꯥꯏꯗꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯗꯕ ꯋꯦ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯂꯤꯕꯤꯡ ꯀꯣ ꯍꯤꯡꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯑꯣꯡ ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕ ꯋꯦ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯂꯤꯕꯤꯡ ꯀꯣ ꯂꯥꯏꯗꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯗꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯗꯤ ꯁꯤꯝꯄꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯀꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯗꯒꯤ ꯄꯥꯕꯗꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯇꯁꯦꯡꯅ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯦꯛꯇꯤꯁ ꯇꯧꯔ ꯍꯤꯡꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯗꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯏꯕ ꯅꯠꯇꯦ ꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯃꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤꯀꯣ ꯁꯦ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯑꯦꯛꯖꯥꯝꯄꯜ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯣꯏꯛ ꯐꯤꯂꯣꯁꯣꯐꯤꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯣꯏꯅꯦꯕ ꯅꯪ ꯁꯨꯡꯁꯥꯎ ꯁꯥꯎꯒꯅꯨ ꯅꯪ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯒꯅꯨ ꯁꯨꯡꯄꯥ ꯄꯥꯈꯠꯀꯅꯨ ꯏꯚꯦꯟ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯄ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡꯃꯛ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯇꯞꯅ ꯋꯥꯈꯜ ꯈꯟꯊꯔꯒ ꯇꯧ ꯈꯣꯠꯂꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯣꯏꯅꯦꯕ ꯕꯠ ꯏꯟ ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯂꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯥꯎꯋꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯗꯒꯤ ꯄꯥꯈꯠꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯗꯣ ꯀꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯣꯜ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯗꯦꯗꯅ ꯏꯃꯣꯁꯟꯁꯇꯣ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯏꯕ ꯂꯥꯏꯐ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯏꯕ ꯋꯦ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯂꯥꯏꯐꯇꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯣꯏꯌꯦꯕꯀꯣ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯦꯛꯇꯤꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯉꯝꯃꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯅꯦꯕ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯋꯦ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯂꯥꯏꯐꯁꯦ take obstacles in your life and turn them into your advantage control what you can and accept what you can ꯀꯣ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ obstacle ꯂꯩꯕꯁꯤꯡꯗꯣ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯐꯇ ꯅꯪꯅ goal ꯑꯃ ꯐꯪꯅꯤꯡꯕꯗ obstacle ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯒꯅꯤ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯄꯩꯁꯥ ꯂꯩꯇꯕ ꯁꯪꯒ ꯂꯩꯖꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯩ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯐꯪꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯩ ꯃꯤꯅ ꯎꯁꯤꯠꯂꯛꯇꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯄꯣꯠꯇꯣ ꯅꯪ obstacle-dagi advantage ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯑꯣ ꯁꯤꯅꯦꯕ stoic philosophy-ꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯁꯤꯀꯣ and control what you can and accept what you can't ꯅꯪꯅ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯕ ꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯅꯪ control ꯇꯧ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯃꯣꯏꯗꯕ ꯄꯣꯠꯇꯨꯗꯤ ꯅꯁꯥꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯌꯥꯖꯔꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕꯀꯣ ꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤ ꯁꯝꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯕ ꯅꯣꯡ ꯇꯥꯔꯛꯄꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ control ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯗꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯗ ꯁꯥꯎꯔꯒ ꯀꯩꯀꯥꯟꯗꯤ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯣ ꯅꯣꯡ ꯇꯥꯔ ꯃꯥꯜꯂꯦ ꯀꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔ ꯂꯩꯊꯣꯛꯄꯅ ꯐꯔꯦꯕ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯆꯠꯂꯝꯗꯥꯏ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ control what you can ꯅꯪꯅ ꯉꯝꯕꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯑꯌꯨꯛ ꯉꯟꯇꯥ ꯍꯧꯒꯠꯄ ꯅꯪ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯄꯥꯕ ꯅꯪ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯔꯁꯥꯏꯁ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯅꯪ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯐꯕ ꯆꯤꯟꯖꯥꯛ ꯆꯥꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯝꯃꯤꯗꯅꯀꯣ ꯁꯨꯝꯕꯁꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯥꯅ control ꯇꯧꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯅꯪꯅ ꯉꯝꯃꯣꯏꯗꯕ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ ꯕꯣꯁ ꯐꯠꯇꯕ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ ꯅꯦꯕꯔ ꯐꯠꯇꯕ ꯑꯣꯔ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯦꯟꯅ ꯅꯪꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯕꯤꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯅꯪꯒꯤ control ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯂꯩꯇꯕ ꯄꯣꯠꯇꯨꯗꯤ ꯅꯪ accept ꯇꯧꯔꯣ then you learn your lesson and move on ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦ ꯃꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯁꯤ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯣ or bear it ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕ In the words of Epictetus ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ he is also a philosopher ꯅꯤ stoic philosophy-ꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯔꯝꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯐꯖꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗ ꯎꯍꯟꯕꯤꯔꯝꯕꯀꯣ Stoic in the words of the Epictetus in life our first job is this to divide and distinguish things into two categories externals I cannot control but the choices I make with regard to them I do control Where will I find good and bad in me, in my choices? Ko. Epictetus na kaya haram game the life ta ko. Kogi first job si kayo no haram da to divide and distinguish things into two categories. So pot mayam masa. Ako na tingna ba pot mayam si ani thong na kaidok pa niya ba. Karam ba no haram da externals I cannot control. External events that I cannot control. Ay na control to bangam da event naman like gani ka. But the choices I make with regard to them, I do control. Adu bu masagi external event ay na control to ngam dragasu. Madudagi akoy na external event na akoy da kari fawhan gadage, akoy da kari reaction lahan gadage, akoy da kari karamay na respond to gadage habado. Adu di akoy na control to wi habane ko. So two things ngasay control to ngamba external ama they control to ngamdaba control to ngamdaba external ama aduga akoina control to ngamisina karino adugi event da lakadaba akoigi emotional response to ka adudi akoina control to ngami habse khangadabne yam phajaba example da akoigi angang amana pekha thare yam kanna hona thare ma ko adu tha matamda ma paikhaduda fail oire natraga ma yaraktre selection phangdre adu kanuda magi response ani oibe yae ko response amadana kai oibe yae matamda ai adu kanna honaraga pass tawba ngamdre so kaidawni si paikhaji tharaga na ko ma give up tawkhiba yae ma chatkhiba yae ada atoppa kano ma follow tawkhiba yae tai pursuit ama ko but hauski same case tu atoppa nga amadadi kanna honaraga mazu tharen khalo ado paikha du fail oiragasu ma khanbe yaba ai nga amuk kano do kitang pahodabagi soibani reading comprehension do kitang shonbagi grammar do kitang shonbagi aduna ai amuka honaraga paragadi soinam ki khangani na ma khanbe yaba ko so this is different response ne ha tar ngasai anga ani du da so sisidi akhui control the lay karam response piga da ge have to ko but ngasai fail oibdu di oiredana ko aduna external event ni that is beyond the control of the two students haitare ko. So where will I find good and bad? Sakai akoi event ama thokanda good vibes natraga bad vibes si akoi da thona for kaneba aduda akoi na karmaina madu respond toraga good vibes thon gadage bad vibes thon gadage habsa kanada lege sineba. That is in me I want the lay in my choices ko I gi choice the lay habneba I masi pakhaje fail ore I amona tharo en khan ge suyai or I masi fail ore masi amka asoy me amdo I semdoga thage hana khala suyai ko. So the choice lies within me sinema haise. So external event duna akhoi gi wakhan ji hongan ganu haibane ma hai seng na ga di ko afa thole phare phatta ba thola ga su madu phana ubangam ba mathang da future da kamaina akhoi na correct toraga semdo pangam gani amadi pass to bangam gani khal nu sine ma hai ko. Amazingly, we still have access to these ideas despite the fact that many of the greatest Stoics never wrote anything down for publication. Cato definitely didn't. Marcus Aurelius never intended for meditations to be anything but personal. Seneca's letters were well letters, and Epictetus' thoughts come to us by way of a note-taking student. So, ngasagi Stoic philosophers singduna iramba dinate moina pass down toramba ngasagi ideas the Stoic philosophy se. Masi taseng di moina larik oina publish toramba natte moise ko. Adubu akoina masigi kano singje idea singje akoina lowba yai sineba ko. Ryan Holiday si hojik America da yam popular over writer or is kai gino hai matam da thainagi philosophy akoina paba tanba philosophy je yam nungai na sumaina ithorak pose si sineba mayamna masi yam pam bagi maram mo oiri se ko. So ma hare sagi thainagi Stoic singsina koi mogi kano singsi publish tawam de moi like singje ko. Ketu hai nu paji philosopher ni manadi kadun dusu tawamdre like oina ira publish tawamdre. Marcus Aurelius ki magi meditations hai ba like se magi di personal diary neba adubu kona publish tawba neba ko mana masi miyam da khangna bana akoi gi iramba like natte atar magi personal diary ni magi kano personal thoughts mayam do ijaraga masagi damakta oizagi na khanmane kona masi miyam daloina kana gani na kona atoba mina publish tawbi bane hai tare ko mana di toramba natte atar. The Seneca's letters were well letters. Seneca na iramba chithi singsi my friend do be magi kano da follower do be mana izaba chithi neba personal chithi atani adu kona publish torok paneba ko masi mi mayam humanity da mankind da kana gani na ko aduna masi mayam da moina kana rasanu na iramba like natte have na ko. The Epictetus thoughts come to us by way of a note-taking student. So Epictetus has another Stoic philosopher ni mai wakhalon jena koi yaurei se kamai yaurei no hai matam da magi student amana note lahobodo aldagi lakhibani habne ko. Hai report sing se akoi da moina publish to biram dragasu idea sing du di ngasi akoi na madu adum available oi sinaba yai ko koi gi gasai gi Ryan Holiday gumba atopa kano sing na interested oi ba mi sing na publish to raga akoi na ngasi di moi access to ba and it was their example, their actions we find real philosophy. So asagi Stoic philosophers singina moidi action torami just haiba the iba adu khatana teba. So moina by example asagi mi mayam juda kanaba pyramise through their actions than ever moina koida kanaba pyramise adu koida real philosophy koi gi like tadang leiba adagi classroom dang leiba adu gumba tabadang nungaiba philosophy natte real philosophy ni koi practically koi life ta sinaba ya philosophy se adu maina moi actions ta gi koina phangobani habne ko. Because other than their common study of the philosophy, the Stoics were all men of action, and I don't think this is a coincidence. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor of the most powerful empire in the history of the world. Cato, the moral example of many philosophers, defended the Roman Republic with Stoic bravery until his defiant death. Even Epictetus, the lecturer, had no cushy tenure. He was a former slave. So, ngasagi ako Stoics haitare ngasai mana haigiba philosopher ohum mari doko moisi were all men of action never moisi just wanga lecture tawraga leiba mi natte we all men of action ni and I don't think this is a coincidence masi ngasai gi chanaba natte sin da taseng na magi stoic philosophy do moina follow tawbagi moi action tawri ne aduga kano tawba moina action tawraga philosophers who oiramba si hoi daw nate lak nate hai ni ko that means stoic philosophy na inspire tawraga moi do action man of action gi mi ohelami ni hai ne that means mana haining is ke mate stoic philosophy si yam kanai akoi da sai action gi mi oheli practical oheli not only sai gi akoi gi brain da nungai bagi oina pa ba do ohende have ne stoic ko Marcus Aurelius was emperor of the most powerful empire in the history of the world. So he was a Roman emperor ni thaina di Roman empire sina khwadi chawrami dana ko aduna Roman gi ngasai gi emperor or mi ne ko se Marcus Aurelius ko si Marcus Aurelius si ko gladiator de yaw warning do du ni ko mai masana pa dana phata boy dana ko aduga Russell Crowe dana magi ko de commander in chief ni na tra And Cato, the moral example for many philosophers, defended the Roman Republic with stoic bravery until his defiant death. Cato so ngasai kanosi mazu Roman Republic si mana defend tormi until his defiant death masi defend taun na atum ngasai masi gi hai tare adun takpati masu action gi mi ne have tak pane Cato se ko. Even Epictetus the lecturer ni but had no kashi comfortable hai ni ko am nungai ba tenure adugumba period na tesini magi disu ko adugumaina pairamba fam na tesini da masu lecturer oijar so masu kaidora he was a former slave lecturer oijringai da migi minai oirami he was a former slave so masu lecturer oire na yam nungai na la horakpa dagi nungai na hingiba hinga dum laikiba mi na tesini masu thaina slave amo oirami ni sineba so all the stoics are all action people go cinema hai and this shouldn't be really that surprising. The modern day philosopher and writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb defines a stoic as someone who transforms fear into prudence, pain into transformation, mistakes into initiation, and desire into undertaking. Ngasai gi agoi gi philosophers sing man of action ji thaina gi matam da di oirame dana ko adubu ngasi haibadi haujiki matam da ju philosopher leiri kana leiri ha matam da philosopher and writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb haibadu pasi hauji modern day philosopher ne ba masu mara kai haige matam da stoic haibase karamba mino haiba matam da who transforms fear into prudence akiba se kai olaleba prudence hadi yam section ba yamna khoi thaba ma tawbada khoi soidana ba tawbase adumaina kano adugumba khoi akiba si adumaina section ba mi ma oina section ba oina onto e habane ba transforms fear into prudence hai ta gadi yam section ba ko pain into transformation khoi chaina kon phang ba sina masina mi du da transform la hali adai mistakes into initiation soi gi ba sina thagi mathang da soi da na ba kamain tawge ha ba initiation do hawali and desire into undertaking so apam ba si action da on tho e ha ba ne ba pa ma ga dom lei ba na ta ba ko so masikana na haram ba no am tam da modern day di present hojik oi ri ba ko philosopher and writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb na hai ha ba ne ba ko that means sai stoic philosophy is a practical way hai ni ko sai ran holiday na sai de hai no wonder ri se ko ha ba just sai classroom lecture to ba nuai ba adu khaktang gi natte ha ba ne ba using this definition as a model we can see that throughout the centuries stoicism has been a common thread to some of the history's great leaders. It has been practiced by kings, presidents, artists, writers and entrepreneurs. Both historical and modern man illustrate stoicism as a way of life. So haiba definition nasai stoic singsi man of action ni haibagi kansai definition do lawraga koin ubanga meba throughout the centuries thaina dagi hauna ka stoicism has been a common thread adi adum common oina adum chatpado ka common thread kawe si phrase ni this is a phrase toina sabmin ka yam toin chali common thread haise common trait adi common characteristic common feature ka hai ni ko adum tawlei ba ta thain de ho na ko adu common trait ko we aduna stoicism ngasai gi khoi gi stoicism hai ba khoi gi external event na khoi ji effect to holoi damni khoi gi response yamna cool and calm oidana aphaba mong da chatkadabani hai ba gi philosophy sa masi thain da gi dum common oire kana singda history's great leaders singda ko it has been practiced tawi kana tawi ha matamda by kings presidents artists writers and entrepreneurs both historical and modern men thaini misu as well as haujikan gi misu haini ko illustrate stoicism as a way of life adi hingbagi mong haini this is a phrase ni adum chami nagani ko moija aduna masi hingbagi mong en tawbase hanai matam da tawi haujiki matam da adum tawriye habne ko Prussian king Frederick the Great was said to ride with the works of the Stoics in his saddlebags because they could, in his words, sustain you in misfortune. So Prussian king, Thainagi ningdo ama Prussia gi ka Frederick the Great hai mise masi mana sagon thoro chatpa matamda magi lan tawbo be ai natraga lam lotion na chatpo be ai chatpa matamda ngasai gi Stoic philosophy gi lyric sing je puram me magi saddlebags sedi ngai sagon da koina saddle lama thai da na ko akoi gi sagon da si sagon ne male ai sagon yes mai ning khala sina se thaba do si saddle ko si mi na pham na thaba do saddle ko aduna adu da bag ama yala chapai mo ni adu saddle bags hai ni ko aduna aziki saddle bags to ko adudha mana Stoic philosophy gi lyric sing je puraga chalame kaigino hai matamda in his words mana haijaba mak wahi da kai hai ge amtamda it can sustain you in misfortune awapham tarak matamda masina kanbigani amadi mabu hingangani hana sustain tawgani hana mana khalame ka Meanwhile, Montaigne, the politician and essayist, had a line from Epictetus carved into the beam above the study in which he spent most of his time. So Montaigne, however, politicians over the essayist, the essay means essayist kawika. Tiny matam the essay sang is a sanarami. Masi akoi haujikan gi newspaper de yawa open editor gumbada adugumba gi type ne akoi essay se thaina di aduna mana kai doge ha matam da mana study tawba ka do adui mathada bim ama lei hai bim du da ngasai gi Epictetus na Stoic philosopher amana iramba line do ha ga thami hai ne kai na mana ha thami do ma toina una bane ba toina u pa mi do kai gi no mana adugi words tu gi matung in ma gi life do hingna bane ba man tor mi do that means he was a great follower of the Stoic philosophy hai bane na tra. The founding fathers were also inspired by the philosophy. George Washington was introduced to Stoicism by his neighbors at 17 and afterwards put on a play about Cato to inspire his men in that dark winter at Valley Forts. Whereas Thomas Jefferson had a copy of Seneca on his nightstand when he died. So Ryan Holiday is American singi founding fathers hai tagadi moina independence phangba from the British in 1776 taka. Adu matamdu ta ngasai gi moi gi founding fathers akoi gi America adu bu haudorak pada khwai dagi mang thana chatkhiba mi singdu bu ni moina founding fathers hai se sida yauri si George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin natra moi sini so moi su kana karamba philosophy na inspired tawng gam tamda Stoic philosophy na inspired tawrameba George Washington, the first president of the United States, was introduced to Stoicism. Stoicism is introduced to Biram Geham Tamda, my neighbors na Tobiram Mana at age 17. And afterwards put on a play about Cato. Cato was a Stoic philosopher, Mana Iramba play drama mas Hanaram Kadaunaba. To inspire his men, Mazi army commander gumba oiram duini ka moina British ka fight taw matam du 1776 ki sai American War of Independence ta hai tare magi mi sing do mar inspire taw na bakaram ba play sanaram ge ha matam da Cato, the Stoic philosopher, na iramba play ama sanay habne. That means he was a great fan of the Stoic philosophy habne natra. In that dark winter at Valley Forge in Asagi, when a land Sonagiba, Adugumba Mafama Oramgani. Whereas Thomas Jefferson, the founding father of Moi America, Hodorak Pada, Namang Tagiva, Minhatare, Constitution, Igiba, Mishinduni. So, whereas Thomas Jefferson had a copy of Seneca on his nightstand when he died, so Manasimatam Damagi, like Pavagi, site table, the nightstand door. Aduda Seneca gi writing gi like ama leirami habane. That means masu Stoic philosophy bu yamna pamjaba mi amani habane. The economist Adam Smith's theories on the interconnectedness of the world, capitalism, were significantly influenced by the Stoicism that he studied as a schoolboy under a teacher who had translated Marcus Aurelius' work. So Adam Smith is the father of economics or money. Manani well of nations and like irambatu. Aduna mana interconnectedness of the world. Prithivi pumbasi loina mak samjanai kaina iramba haitare theory mayam ama lei haitare. Ada haiba theory do kaino magi ha matamda madu capitalism ni. Adugi masimaji yam fazana influenced by the Stoicism, Stoic philosophy that he studied. Man come studied as a schoolboy, school tamingaida, schoolboy ama oiringaida maze Stoicism na yamna influence tawgiba mi newa. Ko adu kamaina influence tawgige ha matamda maze oza amana Sagi Marcus Aurelius, Roman philosopher king do, mana iramba like haitare magi work sing do translate to birameva Adam Smith ko. Aduga mana adagi learn to hore, aduga kona mana well of nations, akoi capitalism, pazaba theories irakpani. So he was also influenced by Stoicism, senior Ryan Holiday and Harishika. Right. The political thinker John Stuart Mill wrote of Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism in his famous treatise on liberty, calling it the highest ethical product of the ancient mind. So John Stuart Mill, a political thinker, sinasu masagi yamna phajaba formal oiba ko akogi kanoma irami essay gumbani treatise haise ko. Aduga adugumba me irami my essay dugi maming du kai kauge ha matamda on liberty kawi, liberty di freedom ha bani natra. Aduga mana adugi kanodu da on liberty haiba ngasagi magi famous oiba essay du da kai haram ge ham tam da Marcus Aurelius amadi Stoicism haiba sa akoi calling it the highest ethical product of the ancient mind. Thainagi matamgi akoi mind da leiba ka khwaidagi ethical oiba khwaidagi lemjaningai oiba khwaidagi chanaba samaj ki chanaba oiba potni chanaba yaba potni ethical hai targadi mi mayamda afawa ohenba adugumba haitare ethical ka mayamna khwaidagi yaba pot ama oibse ethical oiba kawi adugumba pot ni handana mana irami habne magi on liberty haiba essay du da ka Stoicism adudai Marcus Aurelius haiba za thainagi matamgi khwaidagi phajaba akhoigi chanabi oiba yaba wakhalon ni haina mana irami habne ka adu hojisho dum chanari haibani Ryan Holiday na harise aduga akoina masi apply tawraga di akoi life tasu success phangani habane abu ma haise. But those influenced by the Stoics side the Stoic philosopher sing duni ko goes on hojisho dum mayam haibe yaiba kano khoi Stoics na Stoic philosophy na influence tawra mi se yam lai gre haibane abu ko adu kana no edu yam na ma lai gre makha sathari adu hairake haibane. Eugene Delacroix, the renowned French romantic artist, known best for his painting Liberty Leading the People, was an ardent Stoic, referring to it as his consoling religion. So Eugene Delacroix haribanu passing asagi famous kanone mase artist ni aduga magi painting Liberty Leading the People ana painting ama lai hai ka adugi damakta mase maming yam challe hai ka phone to bai sorry. Hello? Kapada lay. So the class to line. Locked online. Sorry for that. Yeah. So Eugene Delacroix is maming chale kai gi damakta magi painting do. Say liberty leading the people have the ko. Adu damakta maming chale mas kanano hai matam da maming chatpa French romantic artist ne natra. Mas karamba mino hai matam da he was an ardent stoic. Ardent hai ta thoyam yaw was a ardent go ko. Ardent admirer, ardent fan kan hai ko. Aduna mas kai the thoyam yaw tam da stoicism hai ta the thoy yaw ba. Adu masamak so stoic amani hai ne se. Ardent stoic referring to it as his consoling religion. Mabu awa pothabam oheliba religion ni hai na mana laujarame stoicism ka. Toussaint Louverture, himself a former slave who challenged an emperor by leading the Haitian Revolution, read and was deeply influenced by the work of Epictetus. Si nupa Toussaint Louverture hai nupa so former hana hai ni former former captain ga hana captain ga hai ni former slave masi slave or me hana aduga mana emperor ma challenge to me by leading the Haitian is Haiti and Lammalay adugi kano doni Haitian executive in Haitian revolution the man lit to me maze adugum mini adumas kai dorongam the read and was deeply influenced by the works of Epictetus ka sida mana sentence ani combine tawri ni ka sige poche Toussaint Louverture si means maming nebo natra mi amagi sina ma describe tawri ni ma kana no have the himself a former slave or mi hana karamba slave no who challenged an emperor by leading the Haitian Revolution the lit tawraga emperor ma challenge tawramba hanagi minai du ni have nebo si lo those aduga si parse Toussaint Louverture read and was deeply influenced by the works of Epictetus. So, Toussaint Louverture read the works of Epictetus. The sentence about Toussaint Louverture was deeply influenced by the works of Epictetus. So, ahan bagi read habada aduna active voice the never. Toussaint Louverture was deeply influenced haida aduna passive voice the never. Ani is a combined tawri never. So active voice ka passive voice ka the same sentence the mana scenery ne kay ginuam tam the works of Epictetus sa common noy bagi siyam na kanone ko phazaba English ni ahiba English ni adagi kanone hatare yamna style amada khogi ahiba mising na iba style amane hatare ko so active ne passive ne punjal laga I ne sida aduga ngasagi kay punjala I no ha matam da sigi the works of Epictetus sa masi common loba yabagi ne ba so Toussaint Louverture read the works of Epictetus have sentence am later Toussaint Louverture was deeply influenced by the works of Epictetus so si common word banina mana sentence am da pull laga kay hare Toussaint Louverture read and was deeply influenced by the works of Epictetus. So, Toussaint Louverture su kanana influence tore aduna Stoic philosophy na influence tore kay the Epictetus su another great kanone akoy Stoic philosopher ni dana ka. Theodore Roosevelt, American President Theodore Roosevelt in the early early 20th century the 1907 la kaino ramani hadai ramani after his presidency spent 8 months exploring and nearly dying in the unknown jungles of the Amazon, and of the 8 books he brought on the journey, 2 were Marcus Aurelius Meditations and Epictetus and Ceridion ka. So Theodore Roosevelt the American president ni magi presidency do loira matung da ma jungle da chalami hai akogi unknown jungles of the Amazon ka Amazon gi Brazil da chen ba akogi kano dani Amazon river do ka adugi kano the unknown jungles su chalami chatpa matam do mana like nipan du gi manung da ani amadi Stoic philosophy da based over book neba adu kana kana no hai matamda Marcus Aurelius ki Meditations and Epictetus ki Enchiridion hai wala action neba ka right. Indeed, Teddy seems to represent the temperance and self-control of the philosophy beautifully when he said, "What such a man needs is not courage but nerve control, cool-headedness. This he can get only by practice." Likewise, he expressed the necessity of action advocated by the Stoics when he famously remarked, "We must all wear out or rust out, every one of us. My choice is to wear out." So indeed, Teddy has in a second Theodore Roosevelt doneko. When announcing teddy bear hai but canosia. Sanapora Maidana, teddy bear. See Teddy Harrisa, as get Theodore Roosevelt, the Gilak Ponico. When a teddy bears a hand was harapada, as the president of Karamal in Bazane, Aduna Madu Teddy bear tolly Nigana, Hyba Matena Giatarena. So Teddy has inside Theodore Roosevelt. Aduna Mama Samaksuka, the Wahamatam, the Yamna self control lay as the temperance, the Hengen the Sabado ero, the Harabado ero, Awabado ero, control of the labor, Maya the labor, the Marak the labor, the Koyam kind of Hengen boy, the was it temperance going. So seems to represent the temperance and self control of the philosophy. As I Stoic philosophy, the Yawido, Mana, Yam Pasana represent the we, Masamaksu, Dugumba, me, Mani, have when he said, Manase Hiramib, Kayhagam Tamda, what such a man needs is not courage but nerve control and cool headedness. Stoic philosophy na harisi ka Stoic oige haimatamda, Stoic ama oige hai taraga di akwai de changi se thauna nateba, but rather kaino haimatamda cool headedness. Akwai kokta wakhanda phasana phadaba ngamba control tawba ngamba adudune nerve control tawba ngambado. Nervous chattabuduneba adune the problem tholakpada adagi panic tawdaba the tension ama lakpada saudaba adagi nervousness laitaba aduduneba important oirise ko hata thauna phaina hata chongthoga hata khanaba khotpa tawbada natte habaneba. This he can get only by practice. Only practice torkanda ngasai cool headedness oiba nerve control oiba se lakpa ngamgani habaneba ko phulakte ta tholo haraga tholo habaneba. Likewise, he expressed the necessity of action advocated by the Stoics when he famously remarked, "So Manazukai Hiram Gamatamda, Stoic philosophy na ngasagi panba, koi action to wadabani, actions in a quite important oiba, gunni, wakan kanba katana yaroi, adagi budilosing labor katana yaroi ko, hibado, Manasu, Yam Pazana, koi madu support to me, advocated at the support of Bahainika. Mana kari hiram ge hamatam da si matangda we must all wear out or rust out, every one of us. Akoi punumak se no matra no mati akoi si waraga thabak suraga waraga sigiba ka wear out edi loi hibado ka akoi si thabak am kanna suraga waraga akoi lotion gibado adu wear out kawi. Rust out haraga na akoi calling charaga tat khibado aduna rust out taw kawi. So ni gudimak sidoi neba amana kamana sibaya matamda masagi mathaudang yam kanna honaramaga sigibama or natraga kaidoge ha matamda mai chahi do loiba ngairaga naraga dum phamungda dum sigiba thaba amta toramdana aduduna mana calling jar sibaduni cinema haijiko aduna either way amadi sidoram nebako. My choice is to wear out. Aigi oinadi ai thabak suraga waraga sai ithaudang du pangthomba natraga pangthokpagi lambi da leiringai da sigiba oina pami haibane. Rust out che calling chaba haibani wear out hagana saigi pot to sinabadagi tummaga loisangibaduni. So thang ama leireng khalo my example jida haraga di thang do koina adum pot chei kakpa khotpa hinjang napi yanba adagi Sinareng Kala Toina, Aditadi Nomada Nomadi Maltumaga Loy Duneba Natra, Aduna wear out Oiduneba. Rust out Hagana Tangdo, Dum Tamaga, Swin Sina, the Tamel Asta, calling Jarni, calling Zav, the Sinayadre, the Gidimasodum Loire. so rush out tawbudi mana haisna wear out tawnas phaisini akoina apamba goal natraga purpose natraga dream ama natraga aim ama follow tawbada akoina lotion gibada akoi life solution gibada aduna hena faye sine ko this is the words of these are the words of Theodore Roosevelt aduga masi kana karamba philosophy ga manage haiba matamda masi mana hairisi ngasai gi stoic philosophy dugi concept ka chap manaye haiba ne banatra Ryan Holiday na hairisi. Today's leaders are no different, with many finding the inspiration from the ancient texts. Bill Clinton rereads Marcus Aurelius every single year, while Wen Jiabao, the former Prime Minister of China, claims that Meditations is one of the two books he travels with and has read it more than 100 times over the course of his life. So, howziki leaders, tiny leader, atani the nagongasai palli ma'am do, Theodore Roosevelt ka na high do. Aduna tawa, howziki anoba leaders in different way, samana are no different, with many finding their inspiration from the ancient texts. Ancient texts said Ariba Iramba Wahi Sing Habni, Adumana Sida Ariba Iramba Wahi Haisa, Sagi Stoic philosophy, the best or ember like Sing to Neb Natra. The inspiration derived that we have now. Bill Clinton rereads Scott. Bill Clinton Natsai Kutingi Marcus Aurelius by having Magi lyric meditations to Oiramani. Aduga while Wen Jiabao the former the Hanagi Habaka. Prime Minister of China na sumana chatpa matamda meditations ya adum pura chatleba like ani pui like ani du manungda amadi meditations Marcus Aurelius na iramba meditations to adum pura ga chatli habneba and has read it ka pare ma kyarak pare more than 100 times over the course of his life magi life ta sama da hena pare haina mana high habneba. That means howziki anoba leadership the su akoi stoic philosophy se Yamna kana halli amati inspiration yamna piri haibaneba. Ryan Holiday, the writers in the mana hiding is matang sidako. You see, Stoicism and philosophy are not the domains of idle professors, they are the succor of the successful and the men and women of action. As Thoreau put it, to be a philosopher is not merely to have settled thoughts, nor even to found a school. It is to solve some of the problems of life, not only theoretically, but practically. The mantle is ours to pick up and carry and do with what we can. Ko. Sa iloy ko paragraph ta Ryan Holiday na hairisi Stoicism ko. Sa haina riba discuss ta riba philosophy sa. Tana generally have an and philosophy has a Stoicism and philosophy do ne aduga manatawa philosophy general philosophies do adu kay daw matamda are not the domains of idle philosophers. Akoy atan ba philosopher classroom da laaga wa nga maga mayum da halaga tumaga layba adugumba professor ki domain nate moy khaktangi nate ba philosophy Stoicism aduga philosophy ko. They are the succor of the successful me sing to gi kano ne hatare diet kumbane hatare moina depend ba adugumba pot amane successful me sing to gi ko and the men and the women of action to me sing gi yamna dakata ba pot amani haini succor di akoina yamna dakata ba pot hatare ko khoi gi food khoi jinjak ase khoi sakar ni dana ko yaudadi sidui ni dana ko adugumba pot ni sineba kanagi sai Stoicism ha pot cha sakar ni kanagi successful amadi men and women of action to me amadi nupi singi haidare ko. As Thoreau put it, Thoreau has another philosopher ni masi somewhere 19th century da lairamba philosopher ni mai maming asang ba Henry David Thoreau ka bani mana fawba lai kama irambani jungle da kamaina khoje itom da hingba yani nature ga na Walden ga bolai kama ko Thoreau na hairami kai hairam gam tam da to be a philosopher ma oiba have say is not merely to have subtle thoughts. Akoy wakal gi wakal da khaktang wakal phaza ba ko lofty oiba da mayam na khangna da ba wakal leiba do adu khata na te philosopher mo oiba se or even to found a school ma hodop school le ko school do na te ko mayam tamaga chapa school do na te mana hiding school na ko gi philosophical schools of thought to ni ko wakal lo na ma hodop pa se philosophy da haitare adu to found a school haitare adu gi sense adu hodok pa natraga wakhan yamna kay haini wangba mayam ga manadana khanba adumba ngambado adu khatan natte philosopher ama haibase it is to solve some of the problems of life ki problems khara solve tawbaneba not only theoretically theory khatang da natawa but practically akoina masi solve tawba ngamba amasu changi sinewa philosopher ama oige hai targa diko so not only ngasai like ta khatang iramba aduga wakhalon wangba aduga only for discussion khatang gi natte but rather to solve the practical problems of life ki thengnari ba problems ma'am sa masi practically solve to basu taka tae philosopher ama oige hai targa real philosopher ama oige hai targa si masi kanana hairam bano Henry David Thoreau na hairam bani ka aduni sini Ryan Holiday na sini tasalaibo my conclusions ko the mantle is ours to pick up and carry and do with what we can so ngasai responsibility have any mantle hai ta ga the responsibilities kana da tare akhoi da tare ngasidi philosopher ma'am jina ibira me faza ba wahi the stoic philosophy ka minor life ki problems solve ta ga da gena adugi responsibilities ja kana da ta hore akhoi da ta hore sine masi akhoi na pick up togodabani aduga carry togodabani and do with what we can akhoi na ngamba mongda akhoi na masi togodabani sine ba akhoi na masi philosophy stoic philosophy se akhoi life ta masi apply togodabani amadi masi pura ga chatkadabani sine ba so sida loire mayam nungai na tro nungai te do comment khatang pibiramu the like subscribe ka tawbiu thank you very much ngasi gi kano si article si stoic philosophy matang dani stoic philosophy hai tagadi akoi gi life se external events na kano to holoi dabani decide to holoi dabni but rather our response to it haibane banatra aduga masi kanana irambano ha matamda Ryan Holiday na irambani masi yamna famous writer ni author ni aduga mana maming chatli je America da hozik stoic philosophy thainagi philosophy ni stoic philosophy si masi matang da mana yamna nungai ba mong da lairik oina puthoraga akoi anauba modern oiba generation youth singshida khangan bagi da makta masi maming yamna chatli akoi jo maina thengarak pani masi stoic philosophy si hana khangam banate adu thank you Ryan Holiday for bringing it to us haitare khoju thainagi kanona iramba Seneca na iramba dagi Marcus Aurelius na iramba yam tharaga paba yam talle haitare ko adu ngasidi Ryan Holiday gi mateng na khoi ngasi yam laina paba ngamme yam nungai haitare mase khoi gi life to yam na kanai haitare aduna yumda chak lamaga hala asu chak thongam drasu sawidre khoi hojik thongdraba hairaga tom fast food ka Zomato de order tawre haitare it's a joke ni so Stoicism practical philosophy you can actually use ka sisna ngasi gi khoi gi title duni aduga masi kanana ibano ha matam da masi sigi nupa Ryan Holiday na ibani he is just 38 years old masi masi kanoni akoi gi New York Times ki best selling author da challabani masi ko magi lyric afauba ego is the enemy adagi stillness is the key obstacle is the way the discipline is destiny sina toba mayam amasu lay paba yamna lai yam thina nungai ko ai pa matam da like amasi 2 days ta paba ngame yam thina nungai ba like ni masi pathok piu online da su dum masi phangmani audio book oina su dum phangmani ko aduna car da kaida akoina dum taraga dum chatpa yabane ha tare so ngasi gidi sidalo shalasi thank you very much for joining me ai tigi di puthok ngam de ko ai gi kano se video se adubu ngamingai di dum tauke yam toina su tawna bo khona jage ha tare thank you everybody sidalo shalage